small. We don't need anything at all. See giants to make the biggest mistake of all. Think small.
He is free. He is free. Expression is so unique and authentic, and you know that whatever Zorba does is a piece of art. You know, the way he moves. And as I say, for me, the biggest art is Al himself.
You started out washing cars.
And made salesman of the month.
People are working, you know, they get into mischief.
Then Hal got to a place where the car business burned him out.
I would say he's also like a great inspiration for me.
Had all the money and did his fucking shit the way he did it. So he knows what he did. I mean, we all did it with him.
I think I was just fascinated to know that, wow, there's people out there doing cool shit like that. Al and I both have really gravitated towards people and stories.
It's just fun to be around.
Hal was always a people person.
Open up other people's eyes to the way that he views that population.
It's a couple of crazy adventures.
Doing it because some deep part of me is attracted to it.
And it's a very brave decision. And I think he's doing a great job.
We had a way of making people laugh. We had a way of making people just feel good.
Don't look down.
Should we put something in my rocket scientist? Yeah, we can do some work for once. Well, I could do the work, but now you're stood up.
Out of your comfortable place. High off into outer space. And look, there's another star to chase.
Make it look like it's happening here.
Big smile upon your face.
I'd met Hal at the Gorilla pop-up shop in 2013, and he just starts telling me this whole story, and about 2 hours later, you know, and I'm like, what the hell? And he leaves, and I go and see my wife who's sat at the back there, and I was like, I just met this guy. I don't know what the he was talking about. Met up a few more times, and we spent some time in the labs, and this is when you say, oh, my grandma's died, and she was, you know, this really big part of your life.
Yeah.
So all of this is going on, and Dad's doing a great job of kind of interviewing you almost and extracting that, and I'm at the kind of the perfumer's organ and the scales, like pouring things together, and then you're pulling these elements and he's describing it. You bring it all in. There's music going as well because you're putting on music that you liked and recreating the atmosphere, and then I hand you the bottle.
And then I wept.
Yeah.
It broke down. It was. And alchemy was real.
And that's when you know you're like having fun is not the right word because you don't want to make people cry, but you do know that you're and that this is where fragrance can be very powerful. You can kind of part the curtain a little bit to people's consciousness and kind of what their kind of barriers are, and you can reflect something that transported you to your grandma's.
Yeah.
Nobody didn't know how he felt about his grandmother. He lived it every day and let everybody know how instrumental she was in his life.
Grandma was a positive influence on anyone that she met. I mean, she was a shining light. Doesn't get much better than Grandma Gilder. I think it's great that he's doing a tribute, letting her spirit live on.
Come on, Hal. How about it? And you know, looking at that, I'm wearing my hair that way now. Isn't that weird? This is me with my first automobile, Lincoln, that I crashed in 1 week.
Grandma was amazing. She was like having a birthday every day I was around her. We used to sing the song, "You Are My Sunshine." We didn't know all the words, but from as far back as I can remember, we used to sing it all the way until the day she passed.
And I only looked at my wedding picture, and I had the same bouquet and the same kind of veil. How you repeat things in life, and you don't realize it until you look back at it, you know?
We just thought you were exceptionally bright, and I mean exceptionally. A three-year-old can sit and multiply 3 place numbers by a 3 place number and get the answer, and you as an adult figure it out on a piece of paper and it's right, I'd call that exceptional.
Good thing was we lived in this small neighborhood, and there was a lot of siblings who had the same kind of older brother, younger brother combo, so we kind of all ran together and played sports at the local park together or what have you. I mean, we shared a room the majority of our freaking life, and half of that life that we shared a room, we shared a bed. It was great being brothers. I can't imagine not being brothers with anyone else. I mean, I owe my childhood to you. I owe a lot of my bumps and bruises to you.
My mom and dad and my sister, brothers raised him. And needless to say, his dad, biological father, wasn't a part of his life. Pretty much left after he was born. So to say, he lived with us. And needless to say, he was like a little brother to me. I had an older brother that was 6 years older, but babysat him a lot and took him pretty much everywhere with me. Well, I guess when he got to be of working age, he wanted to sell cars, and I said, well, you have to come up through the ropes. And I got him a job washing cars when he was 16. And I believe he washed cars for about 2 years, and then he wanted to make the big move to selling cars.
I mean, you could go back to his childhood or what have you if you want to and say it's due to him not knowing his father when he was born or what have you and didn't know him for years. Maybe he felt abandoned on that aspect.
His first month, I believe, was January, and I think he started the last week in January and did well, sold 2 or 3 cars, and February was his first full month and made salesman of the month.
His uncle, Donnie, really brought him up front to sell cars. And because he was so personable and because he made friends with everybody. In fact, his business card, I'll never forget, it was Hal, your pal. And that was kind of his little slogan, right? You know, Hal did very well right out of the chute. Now all of a sudden you've got this guy with a winning personality, never seen big money before, and now he's got big money. And that's where, you know, my worry for Hal started kicking in.
Hal was selling cars at the time. You know, we had an ad in the paper. We needed some salespeople, and people were coming in, fill out applications, and then we'd interview them. I was up at the sales tower. I was in finance at the time doing contracts. And he said, hey, you got a minute, can you interview this guy? He wants, we need to interview him. He's here for a sales position. And I'm looking over his paperwork and I'm reading his name. This guy's name is Harold Alfred Lindstrom III. You know, Hal's born name was Harold Alfred Lindstrom IV. Hadn't seen this guy since Hal was 2 or 3 months old. I said, oh boy. So I walked out of my office and Harold Lindstrom come with me and sit in my office. And I paged Hal to come to my office. I said, Hal, come in and sit down. I want you to, you know, witness this interview I'm fixing to do with this man here. And wow. You know, I said, this is Harold Alfred Lindstrom III. This is your father. And the guy didn't know, you know, what was going on.
Us meeting, if you could just tell me that story.
Well, I understood that you, my son, was working at Prestige Ford, and I thought I could maybe get a job selling cars there. So I decided to put in an application and see what happens.
Did you know I was working there when you had applied?
Yes, I think you told me.
No, I had not seen you for 20 years.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
It's okay. So I had seen you when I was 2 months old.
Yes.
And then I met you in Donnie's office. So
Yeah.
that was the first time that I had seen you, was in Donnie's office.
Well, I seem to recall, I don't know why, but I recall you working there before I went to apply. And yes, I'm glad I got to see you. And we've developed a friendship over the years that I would not trade anything for.
And it was like just amazing, you know. And I got up and left the office and left them in there to talk, and they were there for talk for an hour or so.
Well, when Hal got into the car business, like, he was making more money than all of us, for a fact. With money comes drugs, and that drug of choice for him was cocaine.
Was making 200,000 plus and single, and got into things he shouldn't have got into, and just as quick as he went up, he went back down.
I can't even imagine him ever working in the car business, which is where he worked before he worked for me.
It was simpler back then. I did my thing, he did his thing. He had the nice fucking house and the cars and everything. It was a drug of choice that took him down.
He made a party with everywhere that he went.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, we were crazy. We were the class clowns.
No limits, you know. It would, whatever he did then was also like complete immersion.
He was probably knee-deep in something he shouldn't have been into the wee hours.
CD, you know, like the dark side of life.
I mean, you know, how much time do we have for stories?
The fucking funniest thing I've ever done in my life. Start drinking, take a hit of acid, and we go to graduation. On acid.
He'd be sliding to the back of the prep department, parking in an area he shouldn't have been, and half his vehicle's knocked off. You know, like he was in a major wreck and he barely limped the car. You know, I was like, Hal, you've got to slow down.
I can clearly remember graduation when they called out Hal Samples and Ozzy Somano. The fucking reunion arena lit up. It lit up. It was loud when they called our names.
I went from selling cars to selling stars. That deal I landed gave me 500,000 more opportunities to mess it all up.
They say it was like reckless, wild, and it was too much, and in the wrong direction. Probably even for movies it was too rough, because there were naked girls and there was billiard tables and there was drinking and there was like a lot going on. I was just overwhelmed completely and a bit afraid, you know. I didn't want anybody to talk to me, not a man, not a woman, but Hal was in the middle of it. He knew everybody, everybody knew him. He was ruling that floor.
I don't know how Yossi ended up appearing, but Michelle had asked, since Yossi was in LA, to come and find me. I was on a bender in a hotel. I woke up and he was there. And he gave me this non-judgment. He was someone that I felt like wasn't there to pick me up. He was just there to be there for me. He wasn't there to try to do an intervention. He was just listening. But because of that, it worked. And I owe a lot to him, just being there.
As I say, unfortunately or fortunately, I've seen the dark side of Hal, but he was still a Zorba, and that total immersion in life, that total celebration of life in its full capacity, and in a way, I stopped being an observer. You know, he pulled me in, and you know, I learned from him, you know, like how to live immersed in the moment without any restrictions. Just seeing him that way. At that time was just heartbreaking, and yet it's a privilege to be able to be there for a friend, even in their darkest moment.
Got on the phone and called Isaiah Robertson, former NFL star from LA Rams. He ran the rehab that I went to and spent 4 months in as a residential patient. Told him where I was at and how I'd felt like I needed to come back, and he said I didn't. What I needed to do instead was lick my middle 3 fingers and put an X on the ground right where I was at, and to look at that and recognize that this is the place where everything begins.
Being rich and famous, so to say, to having nothing. You know, just everything that he'd gained, he lost. And he was out there where everybody else was. You know the rest is history from there.
Sometimes when you are in that mode where you're not in a good place, then you can kind of break down and shell up.
You know, it's heartbreaking because that's maybe the 0 point, you know, like despite all that, he was a hero for me all the time. Who you are, not what you say. In other words, you can say the most eloquent, you know, you can actually craft a perfect speech, put it on paper. It means nothing if your energy doesn't carry it. It means nothing. People listen to who you are, not to what you say.
So I was trying to find something where somebody would go, oh, you made it. And the car business was it, but it really wasn't, because it was like the American dream. Worked my way up, got all these things, and all those things just kind of separated me from really being myself. So I burned it all down and didn't know what to do.
It was the biggest deal of the year. So he did $450,000 and he made a ton of cash, and you know, he likes to say it was in 1 week. It took like 6 months for it to happen.
When I met him, you know, it was, as I say, it was in the office of Michel. He closed, I think, the biggest deal ever for Michel, and he was an outsider. He came because he was so mad and unlimited. His vision was so unlimited. He closed the biggest deal with entertainers, and those entertainers that he booked, as opposed to other speakers that just booked them. He went and befriended them and went to LA and partied with them. He was all over the place.
And then I think he spent all the money in a weekend.
Raised in Dallas, Hal moved to Hollywood. He became an agent and hung around with movie stars and millionaires. He says with meth, he felt like he wasn't just living life in the fast lane, he was breaking the sound barrier.
I could now perform a 12-hour work day and then another 8-hour party day, and and then start all over again tomorrow. Itty bitty ones.
Hal says the meth was easy to get and the high could last for hours.
Well,
this is home video of Hal a few years ago when he was high.
That's it, itty bitty.
Before he finally hit bottom, he says the drug had taken everything. He went from hero to zero in just 2 short years.
Biggie Iggies. Some people's, they call it quits and say, I'm never drinking again because they bounced 1 check. I bounced almost a $300,000 check, including my 401k, my marriage, my home, my cars.
That's it. I didn't see my friend Hal for 2 years because he was on the streets. I didn't even know where he was. To know that you can have all this and then one day wake up to this, you know, he did that. The only thing difference is that Hal never got in trouble with the law. He just got in trouble and lost himself. His prison was the loneliness, the depression, being by yourself, not having his family, not having his friends, being on the streets, eating whatever, losing his wife, losing everything at one simple fucking stream. Everything was just lost like that.
Unless you go to this lowest point where you totally lose yourself, and you lose, in a way, your powers, and maybe you lose your dignity as well. It's actually that nadir, that lowest point possible, that you reach, that allows you to rise, you know.
Grandma was my girl. Grandma was my dance partner.
I just remember the unbelievable love that he had for her. You know, I was honored that he shared that with me.
Grandma's house was like your comfort blanket, the place that you wanted to be whenever you were uncertain about things. And basically, Grandma taught me what love was about. She was my unconditional best friend. The coolest thing about Grandma was no matter what had happened, she could let it go. Didn't hold any resentments or regrets. Or one of the best things that she had was her love that she gave unconditionally. And everybody in the family felt it.
You dirty bird. You dirty bird. You dirty bird.
Most any day I spent with you.
Oh, now! God, turn your voice. We're gonna have a fun. Why don't you do something? You stupid ass. Now! Come on!
One dance to our favorite tune. Went to our favorite lane.
This happens all the time. I don't know what happened. Oh, Hal, you're the one who. You need to put that down. Let me shoot you cleaning it up. You have to clean up my messes. Let me get.
Grandma wanted to come back as a butterfly. She wanted to be reincarnated and come back as a butterfly. But in real life, she was scared to death of him.
They're flying all around you, Grandma.
After getting clean with the help of some friends, family, and faith, I found that there was more to do in life than trying to live it all at once. And I had a roommate that let me borrow a camera, and he was a filmmaker. And I was watching him edit his documentary film in our apartment. He gave me a camera to, here, why don't you take off? And go see, and I was really excited because I had only taken photos before in front of the Christmas tree. I've always been a fan of photos, and a fan of television, and a fan of movies, but I had never actually been behind the camera before. I saw this guy out of the corner of my eye walking with a limp, kind of dragging one foot a bit. He had no shirt on and he had this apron like he's in a wood shop or something. He goes, hey, let me be your porter. I see you're leaving your car running. I'll take care of it for you while you take your photos. And I was like, well, you hungry? Yeah. I said, well, let's go get something to eat instead. And he was telling me his story. And when he was telling me his story, he used a couple of words that I couldn't spell. One of them was symbiocytotoxoplasm. So I took notice that he was really intelligent, probably had a degree, much smarter than me. So I asked him, man, if you could do anything in the world and you're guaranteed that you're going to be successful at it, what would you want to do? And he goes, man, I just want the power to be visible. See, people walk by me all the time, and I feel like they don't see me. And at that moment, I had my camera, and I was like, Tch. And I showed him that he's not invisible in the back of the camera. He goes, can I see that? So he took it. He goes, can I have this? I was like, yeah, I can make some prints for you. So we took a couple more photos and he goes, okay, let's meet here, same time, same day, next week.
It was on the same level as them. He didn't come with any judgment, he didn't think himself better. And I think that's what allowed his first artistic expression. He didn't even know, you know, he just had a camera, but and that eye of his was so pure. And people can feel that, and that's why they're accepting it and exposing themselves was so immediate and so total. So I think it was like just an eruption. This was like a pivotal moment.
And so he designed this program called Hero to Zero. And that's when he started to dive deep into photography. I really didn't know that Hal dabbled in it and enjoyed it, you know, when we were just at the dealership and stuff like that. But he really went deep into this photography thing, and he used that as his tool to give back and document what it's really like for these people to be on the streets.
When I came back to give him his photos, there was more, and there was more, and I brought a remote. And with that remote, it allowed them to photograph themselves and have control over the portrait session. And then I would bring back their pictures that they had taken of themselves. Where I was out there being someone that was giving them control, showing them that they are visible, and turning them into art.
It's very hard, day after day, to have nobody to talk to.
Basically having somebody to talk to.
Yeah, somebody to talk to, yeah, whether or not they're, however you define a friend, you know, I don't have to, you know.
And a lot of them, you know, have been in the hood, or been in the ghetto, or been living below the poverty level for 3 and 4 generations, and so they don't know anything about the other side.
Someone has to have said it at this point, but you know, he wasn't dealt the best hand, and there were, I think, a lot of holes where family relationships should have been. There were a lot of scars where family relationships had been, and I think he got bounced around a lot. And so this guy Bill was one of the people that he got bounced to, and then he bounced out of there, and all these years later he picks up a camera and he's going out and meeting people on the streets.
There was a couple of guys that were sitting on the curb, and they both had their military duffels with them. And one guy goes, "Hey, picture guy, you take our picture?" And I really didn't know what to think about it at first. He goes, "This is my military salute." It's like, yeah. So I leaned in and took a photograph. And we ended up being friends with that guy, even though he was caustic and he was crotchety.
Well, I never expected it, but now I guess I are a celebrity.
Mom said, "You used to have a really good job in the car business and you're clean now. Why don't you think about going back? How are you going to make a living off of doing portraits for folks that are poor and don't have any money?" I was like, "Oh, Mom, you don't understand. We're having an art gallery showing, and I'm working with Central Dallas Ministries, and I got to show you." And so it was like a stack of baseball cards almost. And I was showing her, this guy, his name's Dwayne, and he says, "I want to be visible." And I told her the whole story, you know. She was like, "Okay." And they go, and this guy was like, "This is my military salute." And his name is Bill. And she goes, "Yeah, that's Bill Banks." I go, "What do you mean, Bill Banks?" And she goes, "Yeah, that's Bill Banks, Barbara's husband, my friend from work." And they allowed us to stay with them during the time that we were going through the custody battle. And then it hit me, oh my gosh, that's the guy that had came and taken us out of a bad situation and was there to protect us.
And this is one of the guys that he met, but when he met him, he didn't know it was him. I mean, the guy had this big beard, and many years had passed, and over the course of time, this guy says, you don't know who I am, do you?"
I worked with Hal's mom
the Morgan buildings. We first really met Hal when his mom started having a problem with his father. She needed a place to stay. We didn't want anything to happen to you. We didn't want your dad to hurt your mom or any of your kids. So Bill went up there to make sure that you were going to be safe.
Bill was the guy that would fix your car for a case of beer. He was somebody that was an engineer, a mechanic, and my mom took the porch light. She flicked it a couple of times, off and on, off and on. And that was a cue for, it was time for Bill to come and get us.
And he tells him, well, you know, I know who you are. I knew who you were right when I saw you. You know, I'm the one that gave you the name Halibi because you're full of shit. So I wasn't there, but that's how the story goes. And I don't know what it was like to be in Hal's shoes, to realize that something led me to this camera, something led me to these streets, and I've been hanging out with a guy who was a positive, an essential part of my life early on. Like, what force allows that to happen? Once he realized who he was, they started spending a lot of time together, and I think Hal started really trying to return what was given to him by Bill and find Bill a place to be. And this guy's in a wheelchair, you know, and he's on the street.
Does it really take that long to go from up here to down there, I guess?
I joined AmeriCorps when I was homeless. I was homeless from 1999 to 2001. And AmeriCorps is the Domestic Peace Corps. I was stationed at the Stew Pot, which was the soup kitchen in Dallas. And during lunchtime, I'd go down and I'd talk to all the homeless people. And I met Bill sitting outside, leaning up against the wall, and we just struck up a conversation. And he was really one of the most gentle people I had met. He was the rabbit among the wolves. And we would just sit there day after day during lunch and just talk about life and general things. Never talked about his war experience, never talked about how hard it was to be homeless. We just talked to each other.
I got the call from a city security officer, and as I was walking up to the scene of the situation, and there was the truck bashed into the Day Resource Center building. It was a horrible sight. You know, people felt anger, they felt lost, they were screaming. They wanted to go get somebody. It was pretty chaotic for a while. Yeah, so it was a very difficult night.
Bill and I were working on this project where he had a camera on his person, and he took some video down on the street for me. Being on the inside of the Day Resource Center, he would emerge with this different video footage that was really raw, and I thought, okay, now that I know exactly who this guy was and what he did for me, I've got to repay him and get him housing. I thought, since what he had done for me, I've got to repay this guy. And that's why we were brought back together. So I included him on this Dreamtown film project that we were working on. With the camera, he had a two-way radio. I had one in my house, and I lived on the top of this building, the Sears Roebuck Catalog Distribution Center, otherwise known as Southside of Lamar. And it towered over downtown Dallas from the south side. When I turned on my loft light, you could see I was home, like a beacon, like a lighthouse. And as soon as I turned on my home light, the two-way radio buzzed over, and they were hollering at me to come down because there was an accident, and that's all they had said. And so I rushed down. I was the first respondent, meaning I got there before the police department did, and the truck was on top of him. The people that were driving the truck had been pulled out, and they were getting pelted and beat up by the other homeless that were on the scene. And what had happened was somebody was buying some crack, but they weren't paying for it. They were stealing some crack out of this truck that was selling it. They began to run down the street, and when they did, the truck followed them. They noticed that this truck was serious about running them over, so they went over to the side and stepped over where the homeless were sleeping here, thinking there's no way this truck, and it did. It came right up and it drove up over the curb.
And that's how the truck ended up going through the wall and killing Bill and David.
It was a strange experience that you find out your ex-husband was in a bad accident like that from someone in Kentucky. And that Al had been in touch with him for quite a while, I guess, before that.
Well, why must you shout your opinions at the top of your lungs? Why do you want us to hear you? Is it our acceptance?
So, is that a part of like why he has really pursued a lot of relationships with people who also needed relationships? Yeah, it's this kind of symbiotic give and take thing that that both need, and I think best case scenario, like both people benefit from that relationship.
You always get yourself into very unique circumstances that other individuals, it's like, would never happen to anyone else.
In fact, there is nothing but this moment. And when you are in this moment and you just give yourself to the moment, that can be a weakness or a strength.
I didn't know that he knew who I was. I thought that I had earned some kind of street cred with him. And the whole time he could have told me who he was. And there's so many people that were out there. Why did it have to be Bill? Was one of those things that was... being on a search for somebody that, or something that you can do something for, be it your faith, your family, he fit the bill.
It's amazing what you can do when you have to do it. I tell you the way it is. You know, Grandma.
Say the stars are beautiful, you say they're magnificent, but
And that's all that we had learned was of long-term value, those memories of the good times, But then they were usually met later with the memory of the departure. In a short, condensed period of time, this would happen. And you would have these photos, so you end up being a eulogy artist. It was a different thing that, going from not doing that at all into doing that was a little, you start thinking about when you're taking the photo of someone, like this is going to end up being that photo that's next to the flowers. And then you began to treat people a little bit differently, and you were feeling like, oh, they were treating you a little bit differently. I don't know which was the chicken or the egg. I think it was my attitude first, but you began to see like, And then I felt like, oh, I don't know what really I can do here anymore.
so please silence your tongue and let me rest my eyes. Oh please be silent. And in my prolonged demise, well, at least there'll be silence in my death away from you. Cover up thy light, let thy darkness shine on through.